So hello and welcome to another episode of Graduate Career Launchpad, the Insider's Guide to Early Careers with Leading Employers. I'm Simon Gibson, Graduate Recruitment Director at Protsville, and today I am super excited to be talking with Steve from GHD Australia. GHD is a global leader in delivering engineering, environmental and advisory services with the added distinction of being 100% employee-owned. Since 1928, GHD has been built on integrity, creativity and collaboration. And today employs around 12,000 people, correct me if I'm wrong, across around 160 offices in 14 countries, with a really strong presence here in Australia, looking at areas like water, energy, environment, and transportation. I've known Steve for a very, very long time, so this is an exciting little session for me. Steve is a graduate recruitment lead at GHD. He's going to have some great insights into, obviously, the GHD graduate intern programs, the industry as a whole. But what we really want to do is explore why GHD stands out, what you seek in grads and interns, and how best to position yourself for success. Steve, thanks very much for taking the time and joining me today, mate. As I said, we've known each other for a long, long time. I know you've been around for a little while, but I'm really keen if you can, for our listeners, tell us a bit about your job as graduate recruitment lead for GHD. What does a typical day involve? And, how do you sort of shape your experiences for your grads and interns?
Yeah, sure. That's a lot to unpack in the question, Simon. So, I guess, look, maybe the personal introduction first off. So I've been with GHD for 4 years. I've worked in the early career space for about 15 now. And look, realistically, all of that within the broader engineering sector. I did, and like I've said this to a lot of grads over the years, which is a bit of an interesting fact. I studied engineering at uni, did engineering in business as a double degree. Did a practical placement in third year of my 5-year degree. It was good. Probably didn't hit the high points as much as maybe what I thought it could have. And then, the final couple of years in the business course, we had to start picking, electives and all those kind of things. And, combination of a really great lecturer and some really interesting subject matter, ended up picking all my electives in HR, funnily enough. And that kind of then, a couple of years out of uni led me into, recruitment. So I did some work with a recruitment agency for a few years. Fabulous start, really kind of taught me the ropes, and then jumped internal, and I haven't looked back. So
there you go. Right. So from engineering to graduate recruitment.
Yeah. And look, I think part of the reason why I've stayed in the grad recruitment space for as long as I have, I do wonder if I'd met someone like me when I was at an expo, or when I was looking for jobs in that final year of uni. Would I have done something different? Would I have pivoted more quickly to the HR thing instead of, really trying to find an engineering job when maybe the heart was in it as much as maybe what it should have been? So, yeah, look, I think it's really fun. It's fun to hire grads. It's fun to kind of see their careers grow and develop over time. I think in my previous company, one of the real, sliding doors moments was actually having one of the first grads I ever hired become a hiring manager, and then starting to hire his own graduates for his team. Yeah, that was a really cool moment.
That's awesome. And from a GHD perspective, what makes GHD Australia unique as a grad or intern employer?
Yeah, look, I think in our industry sector, we've probably got one of the largest graduate programs and internship programs going around. I think the other really interesting thing is, the leadership team within GHD, and this has actually been, not surprising, but really quite refreshing to see, a global executive team talking about, hey, we actually want to grow the grad program. We want to increase the size, increase the volume. So we've got more opportunities now this year than probably what we've had for quite a period of time. And that's only going to get bigger. So I think like that in of itself, and our organizational culture on, we really value that early career slice of our talent. We want them to progress. We want them to succeed. And probably because some of the senior leads, including he's not new anymore, but the CEO started as a grad for us in Mildura, of all places in the country of Victoria. And he's gone across the globe. He's worked in quite a large number of different roles, and, now he heads the business. So I think having someone like that, came from a grad, understands the value, wants to see that continue, that's fabulous. But then, we're an incredibly diverse business, and probably a lot more broad than what students would think when they see, GHD engineering company. We do a lot of work in the environmental sciences space. We have an in-house architecture practice as well that a lot of students probably don't recognize until they start to explore the business a bit further. And then we've got a whole chunk of the organization that's set up like a management consulting practice, or kind of what we call business advisory. And they take everything from, like economists, computer science, students that have done like a data degree, that kind of thing. And again, still engineers, but just applying engineering in really, really different ways.
Different way. So really diverse range of, say, degrees, backgrounds, individuals.
Yep.
Fantastic. But does being an employee-owned business influence, do you feel it influences GHD's culture or support for the early career professionals?
Yeah. I mean, look, without, and it's really interesting, I haven't worked for a publicly listed business in my career, which, it's hard then to kind of compare the culture of, something that's listed on the ASX or potentially listed on a stock exchange overseas. But I think what it does do, it really drives a culture at the senior leadership level of the people that own the business fundamentally want and need it to exceed because they've invested in it, and GHD is probably about I think it's the 25% of the employees have a stake in the organization. Look, generally that's not really open until you become a bit more senior. So it's not something that a grad can kind of get into right from the get-go. Would be cool, but that's just not how the structure is. But, I think that culture then really enables the business to almost be the master of its own destiny. It doesn't need to report things to the stock exchange and then have external investors whose only stake in the business is a profit-driven decision. Yeah. But it definitely changes the game. And you can see that, right? It's one of the interesting things with the GHD culture is it's not to say it's a family kind of business because, that's got some quite positive and negative connotations to it as well. But I've really seen the owners of the organization invest in their grads, to the point where I've seen, students or graduates that have reached out needing advice or needing help on a project. I've seen seniors just drop what they're doing to kind of, get stuck in, point them in the right direction, give them a hand, and I guess it is a good quality for a grad to have, which I know we're probably going to touch on later. Just, asking the right questions, being proactive, that kind of thing. Yeah.
That's great here that there's that support, there's that openness, that you're seeing the leadership who are approachable. Again, so as a grad, you can come and tell, well, this is a person I'm not allowed to speak to because of their job titles. Like they're another person at work, and the better we all work together, the better the company performs. Now you touched on some some of those qualities, and one of those was not being afraid to go and ask questions and sort of put your hand up. What sort of qualities do you look for in applicants?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously there's some nuance with all the roles that we look at because they require a different combination of technical skills, personal skills, all those kind of things. When I've had grads ask me this question, and you're getting towards the end of the interview, hey, what else would you like to know about the business? This question does actually come up a lot. I think one of the best ways that I've described it to students in the past is one of the things that we've seen as a really strong indicator of success within, I mean, look, realistically, it's not just grads, but other early career professionals. It's almost like that hustle culture, for want of a better term, right? And I guess what we mean by that is that ability or that drive to be proactive, to be asking the questions, to not just sit there and wait for things to come to you, to kind of get out there and chase it as well. And, look, as a consulting practice, we don't own physical assets. We're not part of a government organization or that kind of thing. We're a billable time firm. And that does take a bit of getting used to, I think, for early career professionals starting out in the industry, as it probably does for a lot of the other, non-engineering consulting practices that are there as well. But that drive or that desire to be busy, to chase work, to build networks, even in your team, but also outside your team as well. It's great because it does limit your downtime. And, as a firm that pegs its financial performance on, how much you're actually doing billable work or working on real projects day to day, like it's a strong performance indicator for us. But that want, that drive to get out there and not just sit there and wait for stuff to come to you, not just to sit there and say, hey, I finished my project work. Great. I finished. It's always that, hey, what's next? Or, networking across other teams. And speaking to a grad yesterday at the back end of her interview was really then talking about, it's also great for your personal brand as well. We know how important that is, as you're kickstarting your career to make sure that people know you for the right reasons. And I think that networking, that drive, building those connections in your team, outside your team as well, all it does is it just makes you more recognizable. You become just that little bit more visible so that when there is a really interesting opportunity that pops up, maybe it's a visit to a client, maybe it's an opportunity to get out on site. Maybe it's, a project that's sitting in a different team that might start to take you away a little bit from some of your core everyday work. You instantly become, you're more front of mind for some of those opportunities. So, it's that whole, you can't be what you can't see, but a bit of a different spin on it.
If you took that, say, one step earlier, and obviously you're still referencing when someone's already in the door working as an intern or a grad, take it back to someone who's, and we'll talk about the application process in a second, but if you're, say, one of, 1,000 applications and someone's looking at some documentation, how important are academic grades versus your lived experiences, passion projects, community engagement, all the extracurricular activities, as we would probably commonly call them?
Yeah, it's a good balance to strike. I mean, I think we do put a degree of emphasis on someone's academic performance because it infers their ability to grasp technical concepts, right? So, how quickly do you pick up, structural engineering design or, fluid mechanics or something like that, because whilst university, teaches you those technical fundamentals, and a lot of our managers will say, hey, university teaches you how to think like a technical professional and they will teach you how to actually execute being a technical professional. You still kind of need that fundamental there. So, the academic performance is part of it. All the extracurriculars and that kind of stuff build soft skills or human skills, depending on how you want to phrase it. But what that allows us to do in a recruitment perspective is to make some sort of inferences on, do we think that you can manage multiple deadlines? How's your time management skills? Would these interactions have improved your communication style, working in teams, all those kind of things? I mean, if you can be explicit in your application that these experiences have developed those skills, that's great because then we don't necessarily need to infer it. We're just trusting that you have got what you say you've got.
Yeah.
That little bit of classic CV embellishment could certainly pop up. But I think with those evidences of all the other stuff you've done outside of university, it can even be paid non-technical experiences as well. So, like working in hospitality, working behind a bar, working in retail. Again, they're all great experiences. And I've really stressed to students over the years, don't redact too much of that out of your resume, because it just helps to paint a broader picture. And I know there's a lot of discussion around what's the right length of CV that you should have. I think if you're cutting too much out to cram it into, let's say, a page, as an example, you're probably doing yourself a bit of a disservice.
Absolutely agree. I think we've been hearing the one-page thing for the last 15 years, and I'd love to know where it's actually come from and who's saying it. Because I'm saying if it's so condensed that I can't find out what you're studying, when you're due to graduate, your contact details in the space of 5 to 10 seconds, you need to look at your formatting. Or if you're cutting out, you say, we're talking about characteristics, I'll talk about it as being transferable skills and all your experiences of building those transferable skills. And if you can identify them and then clearly articulate them to an employer during an interview and assessment center, that's a really good tool to have and a really good way to sort of have a bit of preparation. So spoken about, what some of those characteristics are that you're looking for, and obviously initiative and sort of motivation sound like key ones. Can you please walk us through, and I'll put myself in the student's shoes, what could I expect to go through as an application selection process as a grad or intern?
Yeah, look, we try and be really transparent with students about what the career what that application process looks like. We write it into our adverts. So like if you jumped onto any GHD grad or intern advert, there's a little section towards the bottom of the ad that says, these are the steps that you're going to go through, right? So, obviously first one is your application process. We've got some pre-screening questions that we want you to fill out. And what that does, and there is a part of the reason why we've been very transparent about the process, we do ask a question right at the front of the application process around, students that may need some assistance or some adjustments in that process. We had some really great advice from one of the senior guys who's over at Deakin at the moment, basically to say there's no point asking someone if they need an adjustment in the process if they don't know what the process is going to look like, right? So trying to be really open and transparent about that. Once you've completed those questions, you've uploaded your application documents, it's that holy triumvirate for us of your CV, cover letter, academic transcript. The next point in the recruitment process is a video interview. In that video interview, we've tried to make it as straightforward as we absolutely can. It's 3 questions. They're not too onerous in terms of what we're actually asking you to do. And we really try to flag with them how many re-recording attempts each question has, right? So like the first question for us, which is really tell us about yourself, tell us something interesting that may not be in your application. You can record that as many times as you want. It's almost like a bit of a practice question, get you comfortable, get you warmed up, make sure your tech's working, all that kind of stuff. The second question really asks, why did you study what you studied? That then allows a student to kind of talk about some of their interests, their passions. We can see a bit of interest alignment coming out to a specific role. That has a limited number of recording attempts. I think you've got 2 shots after your first one. So if you absolutely bake your first response, you've got 2 more attempts.
Okay.
If you bottle your third attempt, that's kind of it. Thora, and I gave some students really great feedback. She'd absolutely lost her train of thought in the second question, knew it was her last recording attempt. And you can see it on camera, her going, I've got to pull it together. This is what I wanted to talk about. If you do make a mistake and it is that last recording attempt, keeping on with it is a fantastic resilient flag.
Just own that. Yeah.
That's right. We don't expect everybody to be perfect in those. I'm probably not going to be perfect in having this conversation with you either, Simon, right? So we get it. It happens. The ability to just pick yourself up and keep rolling forward. Fabulous, positive flag in there. So, if you get it wrong a little bit, great. We've also seen some doozies that have happened on the last recording attempt as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And look, that final question then is, hey, anything else you want to add, right? So really straightforward. That final one though, 1 shot. It says you've just got to go for it. It is a little bit more pressured. So it's good to kind of see how, for us as the recruitment team, see how students respond. I've got as many opportunities as I can. I've got a limited number of opportunities. I've got 1 shot.
Do you find with students having the ability to re-record their responses that are people potentially using AI to craft a response and reading it during that 60 seconds and therefore it becomes far more polished? That's my first question. And I'll come back to the second one once you had a crack at that.
Okay. I have no qualms in a student getting AI to help them write a response. Where we definitely see students, and we mark them down pretty heavily for it, is reading a response.
See the eyes moving across the screen? Yeah.
Yeah. And if you think about it, what that does, it changes the tone of the interview. It's like hiring a newsreader versus, hiring a consultant, right? And at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. You might be an engineer, you might be a scientist or an architect. You still have to have that consulting ability, that consulting mindset. But reading something off a sheet of paper, reading it up on the screen, it breaks the engagement a bit. It actually trips more candidates up than it assists, right? And like you can see your brain, especially when you're under stress, you're under pressure, it really speeds up. And sometimes you're reading faster than you can talk. and you can see where they lose track or they've skipped a line and it doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
But even just that delivery comes off as inauthentic, right? And I think if I was comparing a suite of candidates, and like I've been going through video interviews for a couple of our intern roles at the moment, you can really feel the difference between someone that has maybe just written a couple of bullet points of I need to talk about this or I need to talk about this, and just has a conversation with you through the screen, versus someone that has written all of their content and is just reading it back. It's like I said,
it's monotone. There's no natural pauses.
Breaks the engagement.
Probably lacking the hand gestures.
Yeah, absolutely. And so look, so I think we've got to be really mindful that AI, it's here. It's a fabulous tool for students to use. So I certainly wouldn't ever discourage a student from using it. But the advice that we've given to students is, hey, that's a great place to start, or a great place to summarize or kind of lean things out if you think it's getting a little bit too wordy. But what you then need to do is you need to understand what your AI tool has written for you. So take that, condense it yourself. Like I said, a couple of bullet points. I made all of my team, and myself included, do some intro videos as a part of the VI process. So, we've had that experience of needing to be a little bit more, wax lyrical.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you for that. Second part of my question is, I've run lots of workshops with students, and it's about being from our side of the table, from the employer side, and how we run programs. And there's a strong emphasis on, or a strong belief consistently, that companies are using AI extensively in the recruitment process. Keyword searches, screening people in, screening people out. Does AI form part of your internal recruitment process?
I wish it did. Honestly, I really do. And look, I'm not going to lie. It's definitely something that we're having a look at, that we're exploring. I mean, it'd be remiss of us not to, given the volume of applications that we have come in. But at this point in time, through the 2025 campaign, we haven't. And I think in part, the business globally is still trying to find where that sweet spot is between using AI to help summarize or help inform a decision, or using AI to make a decision that you then take forward. And, in some of the countries that we actually operate in, there's legislation that would prohibit AI from making a hiring assessment of a candidate. And, because we're trying to streamline or get more global consistency in the way that we do, especially in the talent acquisition space. It's not something that we've implemented. Like I said, definitely something that we're having a look at. But at this point in time,
it's people.
It's just people, which, realistically, if we used AI, it would only be to make sure that we could get to students faster and kind of reduce that lag time that, we still do struggle with, I'm not going to lie, between when a student applies, when a student goes through the video interview process, and then ultimately when we may contact them to kickstart an interview process, or we're regretting them out of a role. And I think, if we could speed that up more than some of the other stuff that we've done, it's a better candidate experience for the students, because they're just they know sooner.
Again,
am I in? Yeah. Am I out? Do I need to focus my attention on other roles? Am I still in the game? That kind of thing. So it's on the radar, but it's not in yet.
No, thank you. I appreciate your honesty on that one. Mate, so we've kind of discussed what you're looking for, what that recruitment process looks like. If I'm a successful graduate or intern with the GHD, what could I expect from a grad development program or an internship experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, I might start with the intern piece, because it is something that we are putting a bit more emphasis on over the last few years. So that internship experience here in Australia is very much trying to do almost like a little bit of grad-like. You're on for 3 months. There is some training, there is some development that you go through. We do want to expose you to actual projects. And I guess that in part is because the intern program is like a 3-month paid interview, right? Like our recruitment process, or our interview process for interns, is a lot less formal and a lot less structured than it is for grad. For grad, it's a proper full-blown behavioral-based interview. There's a panel there. We're really assessing those, personal competencies that we see as drivers of success. Intern, it's more like a coffee catch-up with the team, and again, that can be virtual, it could be face-to-face, depending on where the student is. What we then do in the intern program is, like I said, there is some professional development that sits in there. There is exposure to real projects, getting it stuck in, starting to feel, is consulting the right fit for me? Is GHD the right fit for me? Is this team, is this project work the right fit? Because we're doing the exact same thing with a student as well. And then towards the end of their internship, they actually do a 360 with their manager. That's a good opportunity for them to turn around and say to us, hey, it would have been great if I'd had some extra experience in this, or I feel like maybe I didn't get as much experience in that, because we can then obviously forward that back in to look at next year's intern cohort. But it also then gives the leadership team a really good opportunity to go, are you a future grad, or would you want to come back for a future internship if you're a little bit earlier on in your studies? Because we are trying where we can to bring more interns in, hotline them into grad. It does speed up that first 6 to 12 months on the grad program. They know our systems, they know the culture, they know the team. That ramp up phase is when they really start becoming a bit more comfortable, and the project delivery starts to improve. That's pretty critical. In the grad program, it's kind of split over 2 years. It's been recently revamped this year. We had a lot of feedback from grads, and it's a really fabulous outcome from the learning team to continually look at, what are our graduates telling us? What's working? What's not? Where do we need to change? The feedback we've had from some graduates over the last couple of years to the learning team has been, we're getting access to, or I could have used some of the learning that I had in second year a lot earlier, because I started to get into that kind of work in the second year of my grad program. And so the learning wasn't really helping because they were learning on the job rather than in that more virtual facilitator-led environment. So what the learning team did was to compress a lot of that more facilitator-led content into the first year, and that's really kind of looking at a lot of those consulting essentials, the relatively straightforward things, time management, project management, how we win and bid and deliver work, because we've got that work winning phase, project delivery phase. You then got to win more work, that kind of thing. Personal brands, interpersonal communication skills, a lot of those real 101 type things. A lot of other grad programs are probably going to give students as well. The second year for us then really changes. We've got about 40 odd different technical service lines globally that kind of cover all the different, technical streams that GHD staff kind of live in. So the second year of the program is really encouraging students to connect in with those global technical communities. Start realizing that you don't just need to rely on a team that's around you for technical development, whether it's, water and wastewater treatment, whether it's bridge design or, geotechnical investigations, all that kind of stuff. What we then do is we put more of a focus on mentoring as well. So not necessarily just learning from your manager, but then having another mentor internally in the organization so that you can also, you've got someone else there that you can ask questions to, bounce ideas off. And again, it also passively helps to create those connections that I was talking about a little bit earlier when we're discussing that hustle kind of mindset. Yeah. So, because like I said, the advice from the grads was we probably learned stuff on the job before we learned it in that facilitator-led environment. So give them a lot more of that foundational learning in first year. Second year then really becomes starting to forge that technical pathway. And I guess what we also tend to find is that between first and second years, that's also when we pick up that optional rotation that we have. So we don't rotate our grads around through a forced rotation piece. It's more look, if you've got an itch that you feel like you need to scratch and you do that internally, let's spend some time in that second year doing that secondment or that rotational opportunity. You might find that, hey, it was great to have had experience in that different team. I really know that my home team is where I want to be. sometimes we find that it means that they've actually found their jam.
Safe to say that the internship is a gateway into the grad program. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And you're mentioning, obviously, it's not just open to penultimate, it's open to, I'm not going to say first years, but early students who are early on in their degree, as opposed to just penultimate year students. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And look, I guess the bit with that, and I have said this to students in the past as well, whilst we do recruit pre-penultimate year, so, you know, second to four, but I guess if you're doing a 3-year science degree, it is in first year as well, that kind of stuff. You need to understand you are competing against the penultimate year students. And, you know, some of them do have a really good edge because, I mean, look, they've got that extra year's academic development under their belt. They've had other experiences at university in that extra year. So definitely don't be disheartened if you're applying in, you know, second of four and you're not getting through. It's not a reflection on you being a bad candidate. It just might be that you weren't as strong as some of the penultimate year students. But, you know, we always have had a suite of pre-penultimate students join the business, probably for the last 3 to 4 years now. And what that looks like for them is, you know, and I've done this recently with a couple of the ones that we're bringing back in Tasmania. As we start to ramp up the intern recruitment process, pick up the phone, give them a call, say, hey, look, I had a chat with the team. We're really keen to bring you back for next summer. You know, obviously, you know, the feedback that we had during that review process at the end of your first internship was really positive. Do you want to stay in the same team? Did you want to get a different experience this time around? Probably the vast majority of interns seem to say, I want to stay in the same team. It's great, right? Which is good for us because you slot them into that. Team's happy. You're like, yeah, great. They're coming back. That's awesome. Yeah. But what that does is it does create the opportunity to go, if you had some doubt or you'd enjoyed the work, but, you know, again, this idea of an itch that you need to scratch, or I've said it to some grads before, you know, you get a bit of FOMO. Yeah, you've heard what some other students have done. Like, oh man, that sounded really cool. I think I'd like to give that a try. That second internship experience gives them the opportunity to do just that, right? And that might then be, okay, let's organize a catch up with that team, go and have a coffee with them, or, you know, have that more casual interview style chat, get it lined up. You know, obviously we're going to preference the interns that have done an internship with us previously, try and bring them back because it's good long-term investment, but it's never a huge component of the intake. Like, it's maybe 15%.
What advice would you give to students preparing? Maybe this is like those who are in their pre-penultimate year, or, you know, even the penultimate year. Any sort of study habits, you know, skills, traits you recommend people start cultivating now?
Yeah, look, I think that drive, like we said, one of the big drivers for success is that, you know, that proactiveness, that hustle culture, you know, that desire to keep yourself busy, keep finding new opportunities. I think, you know, where that then, what that looks like potentially in a student, whether it's, you know, pre-penultimate or penultimate, is like, are you just studying? Are you studying and doing other things? Are you part of student societies? All that kind of stuff, right? Like that ability to get out there and experience all the other fantastic things that a university life can give you. You know, that doesn't mean to say that we don't have some brilliant people that we've hired that have just done the study, but they would be the exception rather than the norm, right? So I think collect experiences is probably the best way of describing it, right? And
love that.
Maybe if you're going to have that collection of experiences mindset, maybe you need to be a bit deliberate about what experiences you do want to collect, right? I mean, I think student societies is a fabulous place to start. Not only because it can, you know, their peers of yours, it's great to kind of work in those, you know, those larger organizations, especially like if you're in a design team or something like that. Like it's a really great habit to get into because you might be working with students that are further in their course. You can learn from them, get some advice, that kind of thing. But those non-technical experiences to collect are really critical depending on what career pathway you want to take. I mean, communication skills, regardless of what kind of career you're going to have, like they're almost an absolute baseline. Like if you're an introverted person, if you're an extroverted person, that's okay. Like, it's okay to be a bit more quiet, a bit more shy, but you still need to be able to connect and engage with people, right? And so, like, if you know, and you may not get it from this video, but like, I'm far more an introverted personality type than I am an extroverted one. It's just my introversion is more, I need to take a break. You know, if I've done a lot of social stuff, I need to recharge the batteries, and I recharge the batteries by not being social, right?
Yep.
But this is a skill. It's a learned skill. You know, it really pushed myself, especially when I was at university. I was the guy that did more of the presenting. You know, like, I was good at the technical stuff, but I really pushed myself to be better in front of a crowd, right?
Yeah,
and again, great communication skills. It does need to build up a bit of courage. It absolutely helped me in this job, you know, going to student societies or speaking at events or doing things like this. Having that level of confidence to know that you can do it if you need to.
Yeah.
You're not going to know it unless you've tested it.
Right. So collecting experiences. I'm gonna pinch that. I love that.
Yeah,
You can
pinch that.
That's a great little phrase. Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
And very last one. You know, obviously, so you started with engineering and business. Did some of the engineering side of things. Your careers, I'm going to say it's done 180, but I think you and I know that careers are not like this. Careers are often like these, which is always keeps it interesting. What's the single most valuable piece of advice you wish you'd received when you started your career?
Your stakeholders don't know what you're doing unless you tell them, right?
Yeah,
unless you're keeping them up to date, unless you're keeping them informed. And I think from a grad perspective, being able to drop your manager a note, or if you're both in the office at the same time, just saying, hey, this is where I'm up to, just as like a little progress piece, right? Because what I had to learn at that stage of my career is, like, I know that I'm busy and doing all the work and it's really hard. Those people that are more senior than me are also very busy doing their work, and it can be really hard too. And that sometimes means that they don't have you front of mind, because, you might be one of a team of 10, 5, however many it is. They may not think to ask, where are you up to? How are you going with things? And again, it kind of does feed back into that proactiveness piece that we've talked about quite a bit in the chat. Letting them know, giving them little updates, even if it's just an email with a couple of sentences that you could get AI to help you draft if you were really that typeful. Is like, hey, I'm still working. This is where I'm up to. This is my progress report. Because all that does is it allows them to go, yeah, how I know Steve's got it in hand, or I probably need to check in with him because that's maybe not where I thought he was going to be up to.
Yep.
But at least I know, there's that real tyranny of, when you operate in a vacuum, no one can hear you talk, right? So if you're not saying anything, you're not keeping them updated, and they then start having to reach out to you to say, hey, well, where's this at? What's going on?
Yeah.
The more proactive you can be, the better that's going to look.
Yeah. That's some really good advice. And it's showing that level of accountability as well. And they're happy to own that accountability. Mate, Steve, thank you so much. Some absolute cracking insights. I think anyone looking to join GHD as a grad or an intern, look at innovation, look at showing initiative, showing some resilience, getting involved, putting your hand up to get into university, but also work as well. A nice, I'd call quite a gentle recruitment process. The fact that you can pre-record your responses and get it right, but doing it in an authentic manner is really, really nice. So some great insights and inspirational reflections there. So thank you very much. To any of our listeners, if you're drawn to meaningful work at the intersections of engineering, environment, community, check out GHD's Possible Career page. We'll wrap up the episode here of Graduate Career Launchpad. Don't forget to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes conversations with recruiters and graduates. Steve, mate, thank you very much. I appreciate the chat. It's been great having you on today.
All right. Thanks for the chance to have a chat too.